Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and have you used a CGM before? CGM is continuous glucose monitor, and there's different options out there. Ideally, you can get it from your doctor, but they seem to just want to wait until you're type 2 diabetic and not be preventative. I would like us to take ownership of our health and make choices now to prevent having high, low glucose readings and optimize your health from the inside out by testing and not guessing. And that includes a CGM that goes on for 14 days, and you can order one via NutriSense. And a CGM is giving you glucose updates with a small device in the back of your arm 24/7. Totally easy. I actually did a video on my YouTube channel, Low Carb Athlete, how to apply this CGM. First time, you're kind of scared, but it doesn't hurt. But it gives you real-time glucose readings. Glucose response to meals. You'll learn about what foods are reactive to you, and that could be a healthy food that you think is great, but it could raise your glucose. Simple things as stevia, for me, raise my glucose. Chewing gum, raise my glucose. Stress, when I'm driving a car and there's traffic, raises my glucose. Every stress response is a glucose response. So learn how to manage your stress. Learn how to pick right foods for you, unless you can, do other lab testing and figure out vibrant wellness food zoomers, but it's kind of expensive for people. So if you can wear a CGM, it's a great way to learn about stress, food, exercise, stacking movement with your nutrition. Figure out how to balance your blood sugar. So we want to learn more about how to exercise and eat or not eat. And morning cortisol, does it raise your glucose? If there's hidden stressors at nighttime, does your glucose go up higher while you're sleeping? So it gives us lots of clues that we can put in our investigation when we are working on your personalized fueling, training, and performance program to improve fat loss, performance, and longevity. So head to NutriSense website, nutrisense.io, how it works. You can learn more about your habits, your routines, your relationship to food, a little bit more. Great app to use, and it can sync on to different programs, so you can put it all together. So if you want to get started with your journey in NutriSense, I suggest this to all my clients. Use at least 30 days. So you can do a 30-day, 90-day, different programs, but you can pick which one you want. You get the sensor in the mail, put it on, lasts for 14 days, sync it to the app, and get your readings on there. And then if you're doing my VIP coaching program, I'm working with you to correlate this data together. So begin your health optimization journey with NutriSense, and you can save on your order with our code, as usual, Low Carb Athlete. So no carbs is not our goal, it's carb timing, and using NutriSense, you can help figure out your nutrient-dense whole food plan and when to adjust your macros based on your exercise intensity, duration, based on your life stressors, and learn more. So it's nice to have this data. So test and not guess with NutriSense. Let me know how you like it. Hey, it's Debbie, and I'm so excited today. I am just a little wired. I'm podcasting with my friend Brock Armstrong, coming on the show in a few minutes. And while we wait for him to come in, I just wanted to share that this is the 500th episode. I don't know how this has happened, but this is number 500 of my podcast. I do not have the 500 podcasts, including Fit Fat Fast, which we started with. So that's actually, this could be 600 if I put them all together. But if you've been following, let me know, for 10 years. If you remember, we started this podcast with John Smith, and I did Fit Fat Fast. John Smith was the originator of the podcast asked me to co-host. He used to have garden variety garden variety triathlon show. And then he decided, vegan does not work for me. I'm going to start eating more fat. So over 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, we started working together podcasting, and he came up with the title, Fit, Fat, Fast. Eat fat to burn fat and to fuel your performance for endurance sports. So then we got into triathlons and endurance training, eating more of a higher fat, low carb diet before it was even really called keto. And I was doing metabolic efficiency testing way back then, started actually in 2005, and started talking about metabolic testing and training by heart rate, getting your body to use more fat for fuel, as we have 40,000 calories of fat for fuel and 2,000 calories stored, glycogen storage. So we really got into that. So Brock is here. We'll talk about all that and more. So get some notes out and bring out your questions afterwards for us. All right. I've got Brock on the show. I was just recording Brock a little intro, and I don't know why I'm just so excited, and not nervous, but just like going back in time. And I feel like I had too much caffeine, and I haven't had any caffeine yet. So it's just a natural high post workout, though. I just did a really good workout. So maybe that's it.
Me too.
Brock, welcome.
Thanks. Yeah. I went down to the beach. I do 1 kilometer walk, then I go into the water. It's still like 6-7 degrees, so like 40
double and 30
degrees ish. So only staying in for like 10 minutes now, but
that's more my 20 seconds.
But in like March or February, it was more like I was staying in for like 5 minutes tops. So it's getting there. Soon I'll be swimming properly, but then I did my workout too. Now I'm having my coffee. So
nice.
Post-workout, folks.
Yeah, I just said that I was trying to drink mine because my new goal is to get my protein and, I don't really have many carbs, but protein, creatines in here with water and a little bit of carbs with my mineral mix I use. But the 30 to 45 minute window post-workout for women, and men can stay up to 3 hours. So I'm trying to make an effort like, I better have something because I can get busy from workout to having coffee and water to not eating for a couple hours. And I've been talking a lot about that on my show lately, which is kind of the point of our show today, 500th episode. Brock and I started.
That's crazy.
I know.
Congratulations. I don't think I've ever done anything for that long.
Well, it's kind of embarrassing because I'm not giant podcast, it's not like I'm Huberman Lab or anything, but I always say, follow your purpose and your passion and do what you love to do. And that's what I, keep doing this because I just love to share information I'm learning and having guests on the show and just talking shop with people as yourself. But I think what I wanted to have you on the show today is go back, what we both have evolved so much over 10 years and in the world of our listeners are more endurance athletes and the aging athletes now, because we're all aging up after 10 years. And I
was going to make a sad trombone sound there, but no, damn it. There's nothing wrong with aging. I'm enjoying my age.
Exactly. I just was being interviewed yesterday. I said, I'm all about embracing the aging process and adjust how I train instead of blaming it and saying, I can't do this or that because I'm older, but instead thrive and live the best life, the second half of life. So that's kind of my goal. So 10 years ago, I was going back in time. Well, we started, I just was saying, the Fit, Fat, Fast podcast. John Smith started. And, it's funny looking back at that how we were so ahead of the time. No one really knew, like Vinnie Tortorich on the show, and we'd have Maffetone and Jimmy Moore and other. I think he's sadly in jail, but not a good story. I'll tell you later, but
okay.
There's so much has evolved in this kind of the low carb, metabolic flexibility, metabolic efficiency space since we started 10 years ago. And I used to explore these areas and doing the bulletproof coffee for hours. And we were kind of getting into fasting and keto without it being a termed keto and fasting. So what you were doing 10 years ago. I met you through Ben Greenfield. You were co-host. If everyone listened to Ben's podcast a long time ago, you were the sidekick on the Ben Greenfield podcast. And we met at the Superhuman Coach program. That was in 2013. And that's when my adrenal exhaustion started 10 years ago too. And so all this, it's just so much has gone from our competitive endurance world, doing Ironmans and being in that triathlon world and marathons and trail running to today. So just kind of where do you see 10 years ago, what were you into? And if it's training and the fueling and nutrition and biohacking, and what have you kind of really feel has changed?
Yeah, well, right before we met, like for the couple of years, 2 or 3 years before we met, I was a coached, sponsored athlete. Like I Run magazine here in Canada was sponsoring me with Adidas, and I had 2 very prominent, one Russian, one Canadian coach. I had a nutritionist that I was working with, and I did weekly blog posts or weekly articles in the magazine and appearances on radio shows and stuff. So I was really like, without being a professional endurance athlete, I was kind of like living the life of a professional endurance athlete, except that I had a day job and was doing all that stuff that I know you talk about all the time on the podcast, about like hustling off to do your swim at lunch and then throwing your tie back on and stuff. So I was digging myself a bit of a hole there. But luckily, I guess at that point, I was still young and resilient, and I did have enough support that I was able to take care of that. But I also was pounding the gels, and I was drinking all I bought tubs of Gatorade, not like just a little bit at a time, like tubs of it, because I was just going through it like crazy, because I was super carb dependent. Like we were carb loading, we were drinking the Gatorade, eating the gels and stuff while we were out there. So really, when I met people like you and Ben Greenfield and Vinny and stuff, it was just like mind blowing. And I totally, like 100% bought into the hype of it all and went completely opposite direction. And like you said, like doing keto before it was even called keto, it was just like low carb or zero carb and stuff. And I feel like now, because of that, because of the extremes, I feel like I understand my body so much better. Like, I certainly don't think everybody needs to go through those periods of extreme to learn that, but it really was eye-opening to not only do the like super high carb versus super low carb versus like intermittent fasting versus eating every 30 minutes and stuff. I learned so much about how my body works. And I've kind of come out the other end. Like you said, metabolic flexibility is really where it's at, as it's not about just eating carbs or just eating fat or whatever. It's being contextual with what you're eating versus being dogmatic about what you're eating. And yeah, so like then when I moved into sort of the next phase of my life, which was much more focused on coaching other people, I was able to bring that knowledge of my own into that coaching realm and kind of blow some people's minds again, because that was so early. And yeah, we were ahead of our time, not as well as, I guess, thought spreaders, because we weren't necessarily coming up with these ideas, but I was really, and you and I were very much like just gobbling up the information and being like, did you hear about this new study? You got to know about this. So, and just lately, I've taken a big step back, and I don't want the podcast to focus on this, but I've given up my coaching practice. I'm leaving a few other sort of front facing things because I realized I was spending so much energy coaching other people. I was kind of letting myself sort of fall by the wayside, and I'm going to spend some time doing some self-coaching and giving myself some self-love and see if I can live this second half of my first century on this planet a little more deliberately.
That's awesome. I know I was interviewing Lat from HVMN yesterday. We had a podcast again together. It was same thing. I asked him, what do you do to take care of yourself? Because I think so many people in this space currently, I watch, nowadays with social media, we didn't have that commitment 10 years ago to those people that are running their own businesses, and it's nonstop at the conferences, and people are responding to things. And I was just like, I don't do it, and I can't keep up with it. And I've already went through my adrenal breakdown and burnout that I have chronic stress, but I just don't see how people can keep up with that and take care of themselves and practice what you preach. It's a challenge. So it's good for you.
I'm very good at preaching it. I can preach the heck out of it, but when it comes to applying it to myself, I'm pretty good at it. I don't want to sell myself short. I'm pretty darn good at it, and I have taken good care of myself. But some recent health problems that cropped up about this time last year really sort of shook me into like, okay, no, it's really like it is time. I'm losing my vision. Basically, I've lost quite a bit of vision in my right eye and some in my left eye due to some inflammation in the retinal vascularity. Like it's retinal vasculitis is the term. Probably nothing I could specifically do about it, but as we know, inflammation is the root of an awful lot of problems. And even though all my blood tests come back saying my inflammation is fine, I have very low CRP, and everything else is very much in line, there are certainly some health lifestyle things that health style, the same way you use it.
Just like to write that down.
Yeah. Healthstyle.com, register it now. So there's definitely some things that I know and I've preached, and and part of my morning routine that I was describing earlier about going down to the beach and going for a walk and going for a swim is definitely part of that self-care that I'm really focusing on now.
Well, as you said, and I always say this is self-care, is self-love, loving yourself enough to make it a priority first, and taking care of yourself, because if we don't do that, I think then we continue to have health issues and whatever the opposite of health style, the word would be.
I heard myself actually saying to some people I was working with, some people I was coaching, saying like, you have to care about yourself more than I do. Like I can't do the work for you. Yes. You have to love yourself enough to do this. And I was like, oh man, like the pot calling the kettle black here. Like turn that back on yourself, man.
Yeah. And I commend you on that, because I think, this is why part of my journey is, I know you moved to Vancouver Island after COVID, and I moved to North San Diego and look out to the hills of Elfin Forest and Lake Hodges and go to the beaches, 20, 30 minutes away. And so we changed our lives, and I had to do that. I found after the fact that I'm like, oh my gosh, I would never have changed my crazy lifestyle schedule unless I got out of it. So we made the priority to take care of ourselves. But I think a lot of people struggle. Clients that I have, it's like, okay, how do you put that oxygen mask on first is really essential. So with nutrition and exercise from, when we got into this 10, 15 years ago, well, even I say I did metabolic efficiency testing, which I'm going to start again. I'm excited to start Pinoy metabolic testing this month, but I did New Leaf metabolic testing in 2005, and then we started getting into the nutrition part. I think when I went to USA Triathlon certification, Bob Seebehor spoke, and he was talking about metabolic efficiency. I was like, wait, I know what you're talking about, and I understand it. Why do we have all these gels and all this fuel? So then typical what all my clients are now is you hear something and what do? You do it to the extreme and really, that's my client is myself. We're those overachievers and take something like, okay, I'm going to do that. And then I think we tend to do things a little bit too much. So what have you found with nutrition? This is, our plus long conversation of the last 10 years when we went from zero carb to eating just all fat and having, I was drinking bulletproof coffee, which is the, stick of butter pretty much, and my coffee and MCT oil. And that's all I'd eat all day until I had a meal in the afternoon. And it's funny because now I'm getting people coming to me that do all this stuff now. I'm like, okay, learn from our experience that more is not better. Less is more sometimes. So anyways, take it away what you found, because I know you work with Ben Greenfield coaching and you did all this stuff in the podcasting.
Well, and then I actually went and worked and kind of lived with the Bulletproof guy, with Dave Asprey. So I went really in drinking the fat water and eating the fat bars and stuff. And actually at one point when you were talking, I remembered I was working at a financial firm in Toronto, and I brought in a little Tupperware. My lunch was a little Tupperware with a big glob of coconut oil in it. It was just like this glob of coconut oil. And everybody in the office was looking at me going, what the hell? And of course it wasn't sustainable. And of course it wasn't a good idea. But again, just testing
one extreme to the other.
Just and seeing what actually does work. It makes you feel good. And surprise, surprise, I have arrived at a much more reasonable and sane and sustainable level of eating now. And
what is that?
It's more of the intuitive eating.
That's what I say.
Listening to your body is it's such a fraught term, like, because people are always like, well, my body tells me to eat chocolate all the time.
Chips,
so like, what am I? And so it does take a lot of discipline and work towards being able to rely on your body and to eat intuitively and stuff. But I feel like I'm at that point now where, of course, I have splurges, and of course I eat the wrong thing sometimes, but it's a choice rather than feeling out of control. Like sometimes, like, you know what, this is totally worth it. I'm going to eat this and pay the price, whatever that price is. And I know I can rebound from it, but it is much more plant-based. Obviously, nobody seems to be, well, I shouldn't say nobody. There are definitely some people out there who are contesting the health benefits of eating more plants, but I think even the carnivore movement is slowly sort of going, well, and plants. But yeah, definitely focusing on more plants. I love living on Vancouver Island. We know a regenerative farmer. We get all our meat from him. We can go and visit the animals anytime.
I would never eat meat if I saw the animals were.
So I grew up on a farm, so we were butchering chickens when I was a kid. So
Daisy the cow.
We had Bobo became sausages just recently, so we were eating Bobo the other day.
I would be a vegetarian if I had to do that. Just give me pescatarian.
I get it. I totally get it.
Okay, sorry. Go on.
But yeah, just a much more natural and sustainable and sane diet, and am really able to listen to my body. Like this morning I was thinking, what are we gonna have for dinner? And my body just went, we haven't had fish in a while. So I'm like, all right, take a salmon out of the freezer, right on.
Yeah.
And it's a good place to be, but it's definitely, it's not the kind of advice you give to somebody who's like eating the sad diet and just like, eat intuitively, come on. It's not going to work for them. But after the years of work, it's working for me. How about you?
Yeah, no, it's funny. I, went from, as we said, eating high fat and only fat, and for years. And then I got into fasting, and then I was doing fat and not eating and one meal a day, and just have this big old thing of grass-fed beef and fat all over it. And that's what I was doing. I think even before we moved, that's what I was doing. But I was working out, 2-3 times a day with training with clients and running and swimming, and I was barely eating. So then that's why I continue to talk on this podcast all the time about not fasting so long. And that what I've really learned recently is going from, switching to more of a keto type of low carb, high fat diet back in 2009, maybe. I think now I'm really last few years focusing on the protein and listening to all the research from Dr. Gabrielle Lyon and listening to what Dr. Stacy Sims says, and then putting it towards what everyone else is saying, and then putting it into my own program as an athlete. That, okay, give myself permission to, well, one, focus on getting that protein, but you can't do that 1 meal a day or even 2 meals a day. So I have to really figure out how am I going to get, say, 150 grams of protein a day, 30, 50 grams at once, and spread it out is always a hard thing, because I find I'm not that hungry. And like I was just drinking some protein in my water and trying to really prioritize protein is where I'm at now, and getting, I think, that balance of fat and protein. And what's funny is now I'm giving myself permission, again, is my word, but it's okay to have some fruit. It's so funny because I was like, oh, don't have fruit, it'll spike my blood sugar.
It's
And
candy.
it was giving me a headache. Yeah, it's sugar. All sugar is sugar. It doesn't matter if it's fruit or not. And I was just in Kona for a couple of weeks working. Nice new thing of this remote thing to live in Kona. But I had papaya and pineapple. And I never, I go to Kona all the time and over the years, and I would be so strict. I can't have any fruit because before it did impact my blood sugar. I think I'm healthier now because I'd get headaches in 5 seconds, literally, when I have fruit, but it was okay. And then I was having papaya at night, and I'd save it for kind of a dinner, have papaya and TMI, but I put some yogurt. I never eat dairy, and I haven't had cottage cheese or any of that kind of stuff for years. And I'm like, I need something with this papaya. So I tried some full fat yogurt or Greek yogurt one night. And then I had something else and I smelled like, what is this body odor coming out? And then we looked it up, and it was because I don't do, a lot of dairy, and my body wasn't used to metabolizing that. And so it was really funny just having, different types of yogurt, if I get non-cow dairy yogurt, and to have with that papaya and macadamia nuts. And it's funny, what I've learned or became more aware of is that we need to be metabolically flexible and have fat as your primary engine and your fuel source, but be able to switch back to carbs when needed, when exercising, but also, have those carb refuel days, but from real food. But if you don't have those enzymes to break that food down. So I think that's what I had this weird body odor for a few days.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck? This is so embarrassing. Why do I stink? And the only thing I could figure out is because, I never have fruit, and I haven't had like a yogurt type like this for, 15 years. So.
I think you touched on something two things that are really interesting. I know both of us have used the continuous glucose monitors. Mm-hmm. And I learned quite a lot about how my body reacts to certain foods, and it actually made me a lot more willing to eat more of those higher carb things, because I'm like, I handled that really well. Like, that's barely a blip on my glucose when I had my banana or an apple or something like that. But then there were other things that threw it way off, like oatmeal, which I just kind of had to just see what happened. And I was like, yep, that's what I thought was going to happen. But also, like, the whole idea, and this is something that's also evolved so much since you and I were first doing Fit Fat Fast back in the day, the microbiome, understanding how much and how important the microbiome is, and how we can actually work with it. And there was a time period, like around probably 2013, that people were saying, like, no fiber, we're eating too much fiber, we got to stop eating fiber. And now we're like, no, get the fiber in there, we need the fiber, your microbiome needs that fiber. So, like, we've it's really, the science has come full circle on that, and really the importance of eating a diverse diet, not just for us, but for those bacteria that are living inside us, has really, like, become a big focus of mine as well. Like, whether I want to be eating that stuff or not, I know the little bugs in my intestines need that. Yeah. And they're thriving on that. And if I want to have a well-functioning brain, a well-functioning gut, a well-functioning system, I need to be giving those little bacteria all the things they need to thrive. So it's almost a bigger consideration than I ever would have thought back in 2013, of just like, eat the food, do the workout. Yeah. Am I able to complete it? Go to bed, do again. Now it's like, okay, well, like, what have I had recently? Like, what's in the fridge that I haven't eaten in a few days? Like, how can I get the maximum amount of fibers and fats and nutrients into my system, and still enjoy it too?
Yeah, you got to enjoy it. And I think is that variation of everything is the word I hear all the time. Variation, your workouts, your fasting windows, your food program, and just your strength training. It's always about variation and nothing all the time, doing the same thing all the time. I think it makes a difference.
Specificity is really important when you were doing the things that we were doing like 10, 15 years ago. Like, if you want to be a better runner, and like a really better runner, you need to run a lot. If you want to be a better swimmer, you need to swim a lot. If you want to be a better human, you need to do everything moderately, everything. Then you need to
Goldilocks.
vary things all over the place. Otherwise, like we're really good at being specific beings, but that's not what we necessarily want to be in this part of our life anyway. Like I'm really looking after my mobility and my balance and my coordination and stuff. I've got osteoporosis, so I've got to be really focused on being strong and agile and maintaining my balance and stuff to be, as they call it, too fit to fracture. That's my new goal in life right now.
Yeah.
So, and that involves like, varying things as often as possible instead of being really, really specific.
Well, going back to the nutrition part, I think part of that is, giving your body the right nutrients. And I think 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when we started getting into more of the low carb, high fat keto before it was keto, that it was forgetting about all the other things that, as we found, it goes one area to another, because now everyone's going more carnivore and just eat meat and organs only, don't have the plants. And now it's just, I always laugh. It's just, I never want to get on board and say I'm strict keto or strict carnivore. It's just, finding the plan that works for you, that balances your blood sugar, that's real food. Avoid all the white devils, the white sugar, the white flour, vegetable oils, all the processed stuff. And then it comes down to eliminate all the garbage. Just eat food, like you're saying, from the land, from what's locally grown and what's in season, and have it prioritizing your protein. I think that's just easy way to think of it, instead of giving it a title that's going to be, eat only this, eat only that. Just focus on that. And that may be good, like a carnivore reset for 30 days if you have gut issues or various reasons. But I think people that are just all or none, this is the only way to do it. I was questioning, is that really good for you?
Yeah.
To preach to everyone to do it.
I heard Dr. Annette Bosworth the other day was talking about the keto diet and things like that, almost as medicine. Like it was prescribed for a certain amount of time for a specific reason, rather than a lifestyle that you're supposed to maintain for the rest of your life. It's like, okay, what we've learned about keto is it's really good for undoing this problem or for healing this problem. So for the next 6 weeks, strict keto till whatever problem is overcome, and then you ease out of it and get into more of a sustainable meal or meal plan, and then maybe you cycle through it to maintain the gains that you made and stuff, which is so different than it was in 2011 or 2013, where it was like you're either vegan or you're vegetarian or you're keto or you're I really like the fact that all the things that we've learned from these diets and lifestyles and stuff have been turned into remedies, because each one has a really great benefit of its own, but it's not necessarily something you need to do for the rest of your life. And your point of getting rid of the garbage, how many times have we seen people say, I went vegan and I feel amazing, my skin has cleared up. And they're like, okay, so you're eating all this vegetable. What were you eating before? And they were eating McDonald's, and they were eating everything from a package and stuff. And it's like, okay, was it really the vegan diet, or was it the fact that you got rid of all that garbage? Probably a little bit of both, but mostly getting rid of the garbage. That is that focus alone can make such a huge difference.
Well, that's why I always believe it comes down to, you just switched to eating a real food diet. You got rid of the crap diet and got the real food diet. But going back to what Annette says, and I know her because we speak on the low carb cruise together and hang out all week, which has been a month.
I've never met her, but she seems super cool.
Yeah, we always
Dr. Boz.
Dr. Boz. She's super fun. And we all hang out. The low carb cruise is really fun, because you hang out with people and they're just people. Like Eric Westman, I didn't realize was Dr. Eric Westman when I met him. I just thought,
oh, wow.
Yeah, he was just
He's legendary.
I didn't know him when I first met him on the bus, and I was helping me with my luggage tag for the cruise ship. And I'm like, oh, that's who you are. Anyways, Dr. Boz is super fun, but she uses keto, as you're saying, as a good healing remedy. And it's a good protocol, as carnivore is. And so when I'm working with my clients, that they're trying to follow all these protocols and what Dr. Mindy's talking about, and fasting like a girl, and they're trying to do this, which is appropriate. And I totally am a big believer and use these protocols. But if you are metabolically healthy and you're an athlete and you're actually, a lot of people have hyperadrenals or hypoadrenic issues that we have to kind of personalize a program for you, not just remember that the keto that you hear about, the 50 grams a day, isn't for the healthy athlete.
Yeah.
And you need to personalize a little bit more because everyone's following these guidelines that they're getting for people that are sick, that have diseases, that are insulin resistant, that have inflammation in their body. And if you need to do that, it works for a lot of people, but you have to adjust your workout program and not train for that half Ironman or Ironman or marathon at the same time.
Yeah. I remember I was following Tim Noakes back in like 2012 or 2013, and he had gone super low carb. He was eating 25 grams of carbs a day. And I was like, okay, well, if that's what Tim Noakes is doing, that's what I'm going to do. But like you said, like he wasn't necessarily training as hard as I was. He was training a bit, but he was pre-diabetic. So he was treating a condition that he really wanted to treat. He wasn't like saying like, this is the thing you need to, everyone needs to do what I'm doing. But I sort of took it as, okay, well, if Tim's doing it, then I'll do it. And felt like crap because I was training for an Ironman at the same time. And I didn't have blood sugar issues. I wasn't pre-diabetic. So there was no reason for me to go that extreme. But we did get, really bought into every aspect of it without realizing the nuance, I guess, that's really involved.
And men versus women is what we really have gotten into the last few years, is that it isn't one size fits all, and it's very individualized, and break that even down with gender and age. Premenopausal, menopausal women, that it's going to be different even for them. So that reminds me also 2013 when we went to Kona at the same time for Ironman and Ironman Canada, when Ben Greenfield did that whole year-long study of being in nutritional ketosis training for Ironman. Do you remember any big things that he learned? I know he had a hard time in Ironman Canada. I went with him to the IV tent afterwards and then figured it out with Peter Attia, which is, he's grown a ton since then. But what do you remember from that year because that was kind of early on when people are doing that ketosis for endurance athletes?
Well, he was definitely struggling with the minerals, like losing too many minerals and especially like sodium and potassium and stuff. I remember him crossing the finish line in Kona and, have like you sort of go through the little tunnel and stuff. And I met him at the other end of the tunnel and helped him over to the beach, and he just laid down on the beach and immediately you could see the muscles cramp. Like I could actually see in his abs.
He has no fat.
In his calves. Yeah. You can see his anatomy. You can see his liver. You can see he's so lean, but you could just see all these muscles cramping, and he was just laying on the beach. Like his eyes were popping out because he could barely move. He was in so much pain. And I basically hosed him down with like magnesium oil, and you could see the muscles sort of relax after that. But then he went to the medical tent and got an IV with some IV fluids and saline and stuff, and was much better. But that really highlighted for me the necessary or the need to increase those electrolytes and stuff when you are in such strict ketosis. But he also did the night before, he ate quite a bit of white rice. And I think there was a bit of, I don't know if I should be telling people this, but I feel like it's long enough ago. I think there was a lot of nerves involved doing something that extreme at that time. And he had done like successful Ironmans before using all the gels and things like that. So I think the night before there was a lot of questions in his mind. And as we know, racing is very much a mental sport. Knowing or feeling that you're ready for this adventure and feeling positive about your training and feeling positive about your capability and stuff at the start line is so important. And I think getting to the start line with those kind of question marks in your head can really just completely ruin your day. So I think there was definitely a bit of that going on. Yeah. Yeah. You don't get to do that very often. So you don't want to mess it up.
Yeah. Well, I remember he was doing MCT oil in his water bottle on the fuel on his bike.
Yeah.
Maybe it was more Ironman Canada, but it got all
tasted
warm
like
and gross.
gasoline.
Yeah.
After it was sitting out in the sun in Kona, he couldn't drink it anymore because he took a honk off of it. I think it was, the resistant starch people.
Oh, you can.
You can mixed with some MCT oil.
That's right. I remember
and as it got hotter and hotter in the day, it just turned into, like he said, it tasted like gasoline. So he ended up drinking some of the on-course fuel anyway, because he couldn't stick to his plan.
And so that's what they kind of talk about, the train low, race high, is kind of what he was almost doing back then.
Yeah, sort of not on purpose.
Yeah. And nothing new race day, people, but he, training low carb and then adding in, he was doing a study. Is that part of the faster study that they did it for the whole year? I don't think it was
part of it. Oh. No, that was just sort of, he did that. I think it was at the beginning of the year, but it wasn't in conjunction with it at all. It was just sort of an extension of his own tests.
Yeah. And that's what, side note, I'm excited to start doing this Pinoy metabolic testing cart again. And on people, because you can do it fasted, and they suggest fasted, but then, test out what fuel plan you do before you normally train and race, and figure out what your zones are and what your metabolic fat crossover point is, and all your different markers.
That's something
you get
I never
from that.
did. And I'm always kind of, it would be dumb to do it now.
I can bring it with me.
Okay.
We'll do it in August. I have it. It's in a suitcase. It's right over here. I can pack it with me to Vancouver. So it is fascinating to do. But nowadays I'm thinking, okay, let's test your glucose and your ketones while you're doing the test, and then do it fasted. And then if you typically eat or drink, let's do that and mimic what you would do on race day, and see where your zones are, and see how efficient you are burning fat, and where your metabolic crossover point is, where the carb usage goes up, and find out how many calories you're burning from each heart rate zone. But I think back 10 years ago, we didn't know as much as we know now about adding in some strategic carbohydrates. After, I know S-Fuels, Dr. Dan Plews talks about race day morning not having carbs until you start to exercise. So in a triathlon, wait till you get on the bike, then you have maximum 60 grams of carbs per hour. If it's 20 grams every 20 minutes, you space it out. But that's what he talks about. And that's what S-Fuels is working with. I think Dan Plews is part investor at S-Fuels, but they work together and figure out, okay, test on the treadmills in the science lab, and then figure out what fuel works for that. But it is not zero carbs when you're racing at higher heart rates versus your low heart rate where you're burning primarily fat. So
that makes total sense with what I saw on my glucose monitor, because I'd finished dinner at, say, 7:00 the night before. Usually I work out first thing in the morning. So it was 8:00 in the morning, hadn't eaten anything since 7, only had black coffee. And 10 minutes into my workout, I'd have a blood sugar spike. And it's well, where the heck did that come from? And your body is just going, hey, he's trying to do something, get some of that glycogen out of the muscles, out of the liver, out of the bones, and get it circulating, because we need this stuff. So then delaying the actual exogenous carbohydrates, actually taking some on board a little bit longer, means that you're getting kind of the best benefit out of it. So your body's using its own stored carbohydrates. And then when that's about starting to run out, start adding in some. So you just sort of get that seamless
trickle,
nice little change. That seems really smart.
Well, it's that GLUT4 transporter, which we never heard about 10 years ago. Another thing that is, I always think of it, it doesn't get activated until you start moving. So it's once you start your engine of your car, your body, then those sources of glucose will be shuttled into the muscles that you're using, but it doesn't happen until you start the exercise.
Yeah.
And so
it's to the very specific muscles too. And we certainly didn't know, we only knew that 2 years ago, I think, was when that information started to come out, that it's very muscle specific. The ones that are being used are getting the stuff, and the fatigue is also very muscle specific. Interesting stuff, but it's really so easy to get caught up in the minutia.
Yeah.
And most of us don't need to worry about that. We really don't, especially now in this phase of my life. And I'm not going to speak for everybody who's 51, but I'm definitely at a point where I'm still really interested in finding that stuff out, and it's really fascinating and all that. But I'm not really worried about I want to be high performance in how I interact with the world, but not necessarily being able to run in a straight line is like the fastest I ever have in my life, or something. I want to be able to swim in the bay for enjoyment, but I'm not racing anybody. I want to be able to go on a long bike ride because it's really fun, but I'm not going to be in a hurry. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm in a hurry because it's fun, or I'm late for a meeting, but it's not because I'm like racing anymore. So it's, as much as it is really fun and interesting, fascinating to learn more about the human body, I think a phrase that came up in my podcast before I ended it, that came up time and time again when I was talking to all kinds of experts, that just said, you know what, like you can get caught up in all this stuff, you can look at all the studies, you can find the perfect workout and stuff, but when it comes right down to it, just do something.
Yes.
Something is better than nothing. Mm-hmm. Just do something.
Yeah, I think that's, to talk about what has changed over exercise the past 10 years is a good conversation, because the way we trained, I was doing the low heart rate Maffetone training back in 2000, when I think I started doing Ironmans 2001, and working with Mark Allen 2003 on the elite team. And so we were doing the heart rate training. And even before that, I'm really dating myself, but Sally Edwards created heart rate monitor trainings, heart zone training back. Oh my gosh, this is 1995. I'm really old. But when I we're the same age. Don't say that. I got really into heart rate training a long time ago. And that's why I get excited to do metabolic testing, because it's just something that excites me. But it is like training in those zones, as everyone's talking nowadays. And I was just doing a podcast on my show about this, zone 2. And I don't know if Peter Attia started everyone talking about zone 2 instead of, we used to always in our world, MAF training, max aerobic function heart rate, or Maffetone, we used to call it before that. Phil Maffetone's 180 minus your age. Work on building that aerobic threshold. Don't go over that, because you're going to stop burning fat. You want to get faster and faster. And if you're not getting faster, then start doing speed workout, and you can do a monthly test. Now, that was back then. And I think I still do that, but I'm finding as an aging athlete, we have to add in what I have on my little slides here, zone 4 or 5 workouts more so. And I've been talking a lot about those, the 20, 30 second all out, bust your butt, short, high intensity interval training, which I find another topic is super challenging to do, because I don't know how to go hard and I don't have the power. And so I'm working on that. So anyways, what are your thoughts of how an endurance athlete should train from 10 years ago to today? Have you seen any changes or things that are big ahas, or things that we should keep doing?
I think it's never really changed. Like there's a great, not a study, but there was a great article written about the 1967 Olympic, I think it was the 800 meter race, and they looked at like the top 10 finishers or something and how they trained, and how every single one of them had a different training philosophy. Mm-hmm. And they all finished within seconds or milliseconds of you, like tenths of a second of each other. But like some of them were training in really low heart rates, or not heart rates at that point, but really like doing a lot of high volume. Some of them were doing really low volume but high intensity and stuff. And I honestly don't think anything has changed. We just understand why it works.
More genetics? You think getting genetic reports so you know how best to train for you?
My genetic reports are so conflicting. Like one tells me that I'm built to be a power lifter, and the other one says I'm an endurance athlete. And I'm like, well, how can that be? Like and it's the same company with the same report giving me these conflicting pieces of information. So I think we're getting there. I think the genetic stuff is getting a lot more accurate and helpful, but it's not there yet. Mm-hmm. I just think like again, getting back to the mental game of it all, like so much of whether we succeed or whether we thrive or whether we enjoy ourselves and that'll make us thrive really depends on our personalities and what else is going on in our lives. That like for me, the best I ever succeeded at any endurance sport, I was doing strict pace, like no heart rate, no question marks, no anything. Like my Russian coach would say, do 4 800s at this pace, then 6 1500s at this pace. And like, it was all just get shit done. and it worked. I was the fastest I have ever been doing that. And I've tried doing the MAF training and I hated it and I didn't get faster and I just was mad all the time. And that's no fun. And so I think it really is personal, and we need to kind of like diet. Like you need to figure out what really works for you. Yeah. And so much of that is, I don't want to invoke the word placebo, but it's that same sort of mindset of like, we're finding that even with physicians, if you don't agree or feel comfortable with a doctor, your outcome won't be as good, even if you're being treated exactly the same way. Like we are more than just our input. Like our feelings, our surroundings, our emotions, everything is involved in all of our biological responses to things. And I know I'm getting a little woo-woo here, but I really believe that's such an important thing to keep in mind. It's not just like science says that I should be doing this. Yeah. It's okay, well, science may say all kinds of stuff, but do you like it? Does it feel good? Is it actually working for you? Do you want to do it? That doesn't only affect the sustainability of the program, but it affects the outcome for sure.
The thought too is that, listening to your body, we have all these biometrics now. Our Garmin has all this stuff that I don't even know how to use.
My Apple overlord.
Yeah. My Aura watch. But I just got my heart rate monitor battery fixed and I haven't been wearing it for so long. And it's fascinating to actually hook it on for my workouts instead of just using the watch. And I was just using a Timex stopwatch for the last 6 months. It was kind of nice. I found not knowing how fast or slow I was and not knowing my heart rate, just going by feel and just going, I'm just going to go out for 45 minutes and just focus on that. Or maybe I do speed workout by time and not have the stress of, my God, am I so slow and what's wrong with me? And Neil's so fast and what's my deal? And just enjoy it. I found that was just so much happier place and fixated on all these numbers. But anyways, the last 10 years with we had heart rate monitor and we had Garmins that were like the size of a phone.
Took up your whole wrist. My first
it was Garmin. A big block on your watch 10 years ago. So they've changed, but now we did heart rate variability, and we actually did that kind of at the Superhuman Coach program. Looked at heart rate variability was kind of the beginning of that when I started using with Rhonda. So what have you found over 10 years with all this biometrics and leading to biohacking and stacking the hacks and all that stuff? What have you found, any things that's like stands out in your head of that worked or didn't work, or that was crazy waste of time? Amazing.
I don't think any of it was a waste of time, because I always learned something, and whether it was the inverse of what I was supposed to learn or the inverse of what was supposed to happen or not, giving everything a try. And I tried everything, like going to Dave Asprey's house twice a month for a week at a time. I did I did the altitude training, and I did cryotherapy, and I took all the supplements, and honestly, most of it gave me diarrhea or did nothing. It was kind of, the outcome was one or the other. It's like, I'd go, well, meh, or I'd be covered in hives, or I'd be running to the bathroom or something. So honestly, I don't do any of that stuff now. I keep an eye on my HRV, just sort of just to see where I'm at, really. I don't stress out about it, and I only sort of glance at it. Like the Apple Watch is really nice because it just sort of does it on a rolling scale. You don't have to sit down and do something. And I think that's really important too. We used to, with HRV, I used to strap on my strap and I'd lay in bed and I'd do deep breathing and stuff. And that's now I look back, I'm like, well, that's not going to give you an accurate picture of where your nervous system is. You just sort of artificially, actually, and this is interesting, I noticed I could artificially give myself a really, really high HRV score. I sneezed once while I was taking my HRV and it went through the roof. It was like 120 or something. I've never gone into triple digits. And I was like, well, that's crazy. So then I started fooling around with different breathing rates, and I realized I could totally manipulate my HRV for that reading, for that particular session. And that was a real eye opener for me. Like, if you really want to get a snapshot of where your nervous system is, it needs to be looking at it when you're in traffic, on a Zoom call, working on your computer, going for a bike ride. It needs to be looking at all the different times. So I think that's something I do still keep an eye on. Heart rate during exercise, I do, but that's not really biohacking or anything. I've tracked my sleep, and I think that did more harm than good.
It stress you out?
Yeah. It can undo a seemingly, like, you wake up and like, what a good sleep. I feel great. And then you're looking like, oh no, I only spent 5 minutes in deep sleep. And then your day's ruined. Even though it probably was absolutely fine. And the inaccuracy of all these devices too is really, like, sleep tracking needs to be through EEG. Like, they've got to be measuring your brain waves, not something on your finger or on your wrist. So there's a lot of stuff that's fun, but honestly, I don't really do much. Do you? Are you still doing some stuff?
Well, as I just said, I just started 2 days ago wearing my heart rate strap, and I would like to get back into HRV testing once in a while, but I always have the good intentions. But as you said, it's difficult to do the chest strap in the morning and lie there for 5 minutes and do the test, because when I get up, somehow Neil can play brain games on his phone and lay in bed for 10 minutes. I got to get up or else I'm rolling over back to sleep. So I get up and I start, baking the French press coffee. That's my role. And I will start. So to sit back down, get a strap on it, I just don't do it. So I just kind of look at my HRV for my Oura Ring score each day, but it's more, I've been getting into how to get more deep sleep. And it helps me look at, if I'm taking glycine, for example, last night, I actually took it 2 times earlier because I thought, it's on the counter, I should take it now. Then I didn't really, did I take that or not? I took it twice, I realized. And my deep sleep was 33% today. So it's more, even it might be not 100% accurate, but just give me kind of some information, biofeedback of what supplements or kind of sleep stacks and habits that I do. Because we have our sunlight and sauna, and we've been doing this 15-minute kind of yin yoga stretching at night with the fireplace on. And what works and what doesn't work for my sleep. So I'm always trying to experiment with that, but not making it stressful.
When you're doing something like that, it's working. Like, you can feel it in the moment. And just doing it in the moment, like, while you're doing it, it feels so good, and you can feel yourself relaxing and shaking off the day. We don't need devices to tell us anything about that.
No,
I have a whole wind down routine too and I don't need some sort of measurement or need to see what my deep sleep is or anything. It's like,
you feel
this
calm.
Feels good while I'm doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. That good old dopamine, where it reminds you, like, this feels good. Do more of this. We've got all of this stuff built in. We just have to tune into it.
One other thing with the metrics, going back, I wrote down what you're saying about, tracking things, and we're talking about heart rate, but have you found, do you still bike at all? If you look at watts versus heart rate, or use both? It's something I've been playing with lately. It's like, okay, if people just train by watts, how do you know what heart rate? Should you improve your watts by focusing on heart rate and have a workout, say I'm going to do 110 heart rate, 120, 130, 140 heart rate, and see what watts are at that point, versus looking at, I'm doing 150 watts, 175, 200.
Yeah.
No.
I'm thinking back to the people I coached, and honestly, it was mostly to do with who had a watt meter, because most people don't.
Yeah. No, I just do the spin bike lately, the Stages bike. That I'm like, I'm going to just experiment. Which, should I go by watts, or should I go by heart rate, or just look at where each one is?
Yeah, that's for myself, when I have my bike on the trainer and I'm using like Zwift, which gives you like the watts and the heart rate right next to each other. I like to see how they line up. But again, since I'm not training for anything, it's more like, okay, how low can I get my heart rate without having really lame watts is sort of the game I play. But in terms of coaching people, I only had maybe 2 endurance athletes that actually had a way to monitor their watts. So heart rate is just so much more accessible, because pretty much everybody has a Fitbit or a Garmin or an Apple Watch or something. So
nowadays,
I think it's often, it comes down to that rather than what's going to be the most effective, because it's kind of splitting hairs, I think, at a certain point, whether you're going to get like a 0.01% boost if you focused on watts instead of heart rate. Really is like, are you getting out and being consistent with your training? You're going to improve. So let's not get too caught in the weeds.
So I know we're going to run out of time, so we'll be cautious of your schedule, your time. But the other thing is, I think a lot of people are fixated on is ketones. And while they're training, I want to stay in nutritional ketosis. And what have you found since we got into people being in nutritional ketosis? Because again, 10 years ago, we didn't know that really. Just as, eat low carb, train to burn fat, and eat fat to burn fat, train a certain way. So you're burning more fat at the lower heart rates. So anything on that, I just find that it's just, everyone's like, oh, I'm doing this long bike ride. How do I stay in ketosis? I'm like, does it matter? Don't you want to burn fat?
What's you don't get a medal for crossing the finish line still in ketosis. There's no, that's not the goal here. I think, again, just drawing on Annette Bosworth, on Dr. Boz, she was talking about how we've really, and this was at KetoCon. Did you attend KetoCon?
You went to KetoCon?
I didn't. No,
I always go, and I didn't go this year. No, I did not.
In my role as fly on the wall for so many people's videos and audio and stuff, as a AV technician, I get to see stuff that I don't necessarily get to be at. But I saw her talking about how, like, walking the floor in KetoCon, there were so many packaged foods that were all keto friendly, and they're all like keto cookies and keto brownies and stuff, and how she feels that, and I shouldn't be putting words in her mouth, but this is generally what I took away from what she said, whether she said it or not. This was my takeaway, was that we've overcomplicated ketosis. We've overcomplicated to the point where we need to be eating specific keto things foods from packaged. We need to be eating these keto foods. And she's like, what about just fasting? Like,
that's what I was just saying. Why do we need keto foods?
We make our own ketones in the absence of other stuff. So just do some fasting and simplify this idea. If you really have a goal for being in ketosis, for, like we were saying, like for a really particular medical condition or something you want to be undoing, or cycling through it seems to be really beneficial for many people to go into ketosis every once in a while. But it doesn't involve needing all of these supplements and rigid schemes. Just fast a little bit. Doesn't even have to be that much. You don't have to do a 72-hour fast.
I was just going to say, you might want to add in too how long is necessary, because that's what my clientele that are coming to me, they're all doing excessive fasting. And if you go back to what we've learned for athletes and what Ben Greenfield said, I have this, he did a Dr. Pompa seminar in 2019, and he was talking about fasting benefits, fasted exercise, but it was, zone 1, maybe zone 2 exercise, not hard. And
go for a walk.
Go for a walk. You can do fasted, but if you're going to do higher heart rate, or if you're going to work out twice a day, if you're going to do a hard workout in the morning, look at what you ate the night before. And then, Dr. Stacey Sims talks about women are different than men, need a little bit of carbs pre-workout to get their body actually to burn more fat. So it's so much information there, but so many people think, because they're listening to the non-endurance community, I think that we need to be in nutritional ketosis all the time. They don't want to break that while they're working out. And they don't realize that, I'm going off track, but it was about fasting too long, that we say 12 to 15 hours is plenty for athletes. And you listen to Rob Wolf, you get the benefits a lot from exercise in itself for cell autophagy and having some coffee. And then the fasting 12 hours, isn't that enough to create your own ketones, because your glycogen gets lower down that when you're not eating, and your body starts to search for fuel, and it'll make ketones, and you'll get in a nutritional ketosis by just your body's own innate intelligence, that you don't need to have keto packaged foods to be in keto.
I think Dr. Mindy Pelz did an excellent interview with Misha Tate, the MMA fighter. And she basically walked through the entire menstrual cycle, or the cycle in general, not just menstruation, but the whole cycle, and looking at which times different hormones are dominant and which ones require more carbs or lower carbs, and really like figuring out when to fast for optimal performance. Like Misha Tate is obviously like she's fighting again this year, even though she just had 2 kids. Like she's super badass. So we don't need to train like her, but it was really interesting to hear that not only is it conditional or contextual to the workout, but to which part of the cycle you're in and stuff. It's really, really interesting. But at no point was there, and this is the time to pound the keto brownies.
Yeah. So a couple of things there. I've had Dr. Mindy on the show about 3 times, and we've talked all about that for athletes. And I was on her show when it first started. And that the information is, as we said, for metabolically challenged people, and we have to tweak it. Her mapping the fasting cycle for women and mapping out your best times to exercise and non-keto days around ovulation and late luteal phase and not being in keto then, and when to fit in a longer fast is what I keep telling my athletes. Like, okay, that means when you're doing a rest day, not trying to do your long run on that day. But yeah, really personalizing it is what I find I end up doing more now, is coaching people, taking all that information. Let's create your program based on your lifestyle, your stressors, your functional lab test, even blood chemistry panel, look at your current nutrition program and mapping out your week and month and even cycle, and then matching your nutrition and your exercise together. Because a lot of people are not fueling at all now, because we've heard this information like, oh, I'm not going to eat anything. And I did the same thing. Talk about over the past 10 years, how much I've experimented to change, like, okay, not eating, and then, not eating till I get home and it's 2:00 in the afternoon. And really now I'm focused on, okay, I need to get leaner. I don't like having flabby arms. I want to have muscle tone, and I have to do a little bit more prep, having my essential aminos before and then afterwards. And now we hear about creatine and getting that protein in that window and all this stuff that you have to actually eat something or take some nutritional therapy benefits there. But anyways,
but most of us don't have to, is the thing. Like most of us aren't training that hard or needing to have that extra 0.01% boost in muscle gain or endurance or speed or whatever.
It's what's your why,
your focus
right?
is. Exactly. Yeah. Most of us, especially, and people in our age category, and especially people who aren't racing or aren't racing seriously, I guess, or competitively anymore, there's so much more wiggle room. And that's, I think, my biggest takeaway from the last 10 years and 500 episodes and stuff is that the more I learn, the more I realize we don't know. I heard a scientist the other day say, we only know 1% of 1% of what is possible to know. And he's talking about like science in general, just the fact that the universe and the earth and the oceans and stuff are largely unexplored. And even our own bodies, we don't know how the brain works. We don't even know why the brain works. That. So we really only know like 1% of 1% of what is possible to know. And remembering that, while still using the things that we do know and that we're learning to make some educated guesses. And like you said, exactly, like tracking the cycle and tracking your daily routine and tracking how these foods work and watching the other things to learn how your personal universe, so you can know 1% of 1% of what your body needs, I think is the thing that I've learned the most, is not to be dependent or a slave to any diet, any workout program, any protocol. Really, like, be open to whatever is working, whatever might be possible. Don't ever go, well, that's not possible. Like, you can't do that. That can't be the right way to go, unless, of course, it's, well, actually, I guess I was going to say unless it's eating McDonald's, but then Usain Bolt eats freaking chicken McNuggets before he sets world records. So maybe there's a room for that even. It's I think even he wouldn't say that's a good idea.
So I know we got to wrap up, but the one thing I wrote down here too, what you said about the keto foods at conferences in the market, I have a struggle that they're certified keto And if they're not, they can't be certified if they're with coconut sugar or maple syrup or, I don't know what's another good, natural sugar, organic cane sugar. They are certified keto. Their sugars that they have on the list to make them be able to be certified keto are stevia and monk fruit and erythritol. So I don't do well with stevia, even if it was naturally originally from a leaf, but I find that I'm experimenting with, okay, let's switch from, not that those aren't real, but I think they get overly processed. They're not the same as they used to be when they first started being a source, because now they're mass produced and we don't really know what's in them maybe anymore. I don't know, but it's just not, the certified keto doesn't actually mean real food. Just what I want to say.
Recently, erythritol and xylitol was shown to cause blood clots.
Yeah, but you can go into that. So the study was kind of bogus too. If you look at the study, a lot of people were like, who is that done on and how long?
Yeah, it wasn't bogus, but I think it definitely, it's one of those ones that concludes with more studies are necessary. Yeah. But it also just sort of highlights the fact that just because something's keto doesn't mean it's good for you in all realms. Like there could be some big problems. Like we thought aspartame was a godsend in the 80s too. And now we're just rethinking that too. Yeah. So
I always go to the natural product show as Expo West in Anaheim. It's natural foods coming out, what's out new in the market. So I look at, and that study just came out, and I'd walk by the booth like, and we don't have erythritol. It's like, do you even know what that was about? They just were claiming that, and everyone has ashwagandha and everything, by the way. It's a new thing. But okay. And then lastly, just, we're not training for things. I'm training for life, but I think a lot of people, is a whole nother podcast to do, is what you're training for. A lot of people, as I used to do, is, okay, I do an Ironman and then I'm doing, world championship Ironman. But in between that, I need to do a half Ironman and some Olympic distance races. Then off season, I still want to stay in shape. So I'm going to do a marathon, and I want trail running. So I do 50K runs, and then you're racing all the time.
Yeah.
And now it's just, training for enjoyment, but I still swim, bike, run, and lift weights. But do you feel that, another show, because we keep talking and I know we need to get to work, but is there a purpose to keep racing as you get older, or to have a plan and a purpose to your workouts? Or do you find it just enjoyable to just go by what you feel like and keep fit and healthy, and that self-care, self-love, as we started beginning of the show on?
I think it's definitely possible to do both. And for me, instead of looking at what my race schedule is or my race season looks like, it's looking at, okay, what am I likely to do? I'm definitely going to do some paddle boarding. I'm going to go up to Comox Lake with my buddy Dan, who do some paddleboarding. We're going to do some cycling. I love to swim in the ocean as much as I can. So the race schedule gets replaced by the activities that I know I'm going to want to do, like at the drop of a hat, like a sunny Saturday morning when we go, let's climb Mount Benson. Like, yeah. So I want to be ready for that. I don't want to have to think like, oh, am I in good enough shape to climb Mount Benson? Like, yeah. That's my default. I'm able to do that. Am I able to go paddle around Lake Comox? Yes. So I think you can have that self-love and be paying attention to your own needs, not have to schedule out your entire season and have these races that cost God knows how much money these days. Like some of them are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of dollars to race in, but still have your goal activities in mind that you are training for, which really is motivating. Like if you know why you're doing this workout, it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing upper body strength because paddleboarding. Like I need to have that core strength and the shoulder strength to paddleboard well. It's a lot more motivating and easy to do that workout than to just be like, well, I should be doing something, so I guess I'll do this. Instead, it's like, yep, okay, paddleboard morning. Okay, nope, gonna do some cycling today to keep my legs ready because it's spring and we're gonna be going out on the bikes more. Stuff. I think that's the way that I approach it these days, is like being very specific with what do I want to be able to do now and going forward.
Yeah, love that. Well, that's a great place to stop, because I know we have to get to our jobs that pay us and get to work, and this is our fun job. And you're not podcasting anymore, but you're doing social media. Where can people find you to see what Brock's up to?
I'm trying to stay off.
Nowhere?
Well, I'm not even trying. I have been forcing myself to be on social media for so many years against my own will that
Me too.
The only thing, what I'm doing right now is I've gone full circle back to actually when we first met, where I was working for, I was producing podcasts for all kinds of people. That's what I'm doing again now. So I guess if anybody's looking for an AV technician for digital media, they can find me. frozenpuck.com is my shitty website. I really need to redo it, but I'm too busy to redo my own website, which is a good thing. But I'm back to those days where I'm learning lots and getting paid a lot more too. There's a lot more money in doing that.
I know people don't get that we do this. You don't really make my level of podcasting is doing it because I like to do it. I lost so much money podcasting. I know. I was just like, money. Can I not have all these fees? People don't get, you have to pay for hosting site and the editing and the show notes and blah, blah, blah. So it's out of love. I've done those first 500 episodes. So thanks for sharing this episode with me and talking shop and what has happened in our worlds in the past 10 years as endurance athletes, but now focusing on the aging athlete and improving the aging process, living our best life, the second half of life, as we should. Thanks, Brock.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.